As we mentioned, a lot of new exciting segments are going to come on the program. A lot of the old boys who've been working with us for years are going to be on the show. Each one's going to have their segment, and as we go, it's going to kind of move and shift. It is very organic in nature, so don't expect to have anything like locked in stone. But we're going to try different things. One of the things that we're going to do is the very first segment of the show is going to be one that we're very familiar with, and that is a little fish talk.
Tea time. That's what I want to talk about today, folks. Transition periods, transition from spring to summer, summer to fall. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. Those transitions are often spread over 2 or 3 weeks. And the reason why, take the spring to summer. Maybe in the summer the weeds haven't fully developed yet. So you find the fish generally where they're leaving, where they're heading to, and somewhere in between. You can find them spread out over great distances. Anytime that happens, throw fast-moving horizontal baits. The other thing is, if you've got a favorite trolling pattern, transitions, that's when trolling comes into its own.
Nicely done. Hey, Doc, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well.
You know what? Every time. Okay, that piece right there I've seen with Gord Pyzer. I've probably seen it about 38 times, and I still just sit here and watch it every time. Just glued and listening. Well done, Gordy. Good to have you, man.
Always fun, eh, boys?
Yeah.
Welcome to our new world, my friend. Hopefully, how long did we do Outdoor Journal Radio together? How many? Do you know how many years? Because I never checked it, but it's been a while. A lot. Well, hopefully we'll do the same with this. It's really exciting to have you on the program, and I know the audience has been waiting for this announcement. So, first of all, how are you doing with? We've been off radio now for, I guess, I'm going to say 6 weeks. I think. How are you coping with that?
I've got Saturdays free. The other thing, I'm an hour behind you, so I'm on Central Time.
Right.
So it used to didn't tie me up, but I'd have the truck running in the garage. I'd often have the boat, and Liam would be sitting out there, and I'm doing radio. Now I don't have, and now I've got Saturdays totally free. So
yeah, it's a weird feeling, man. For me, I've been doing the show 28 years, and out of those 28 years, I'm going to venture to guess that I missed a dozen shows. Yeah. And so that means that my Saturdays were when I wasn't. The only reason I missed those, by the way, Pete and I would be out shooting a Fish in Canada episode, and we couldn't make it back in time, or we had to leave early. But what I was going to say to you, the weirdest thing about it, yes, it's nice not having to get up early Saturday morning. I agree. But you know what really is different now is my Sundays. Because it's actually 2 days in a row now. By Sundays now, it's 2 days that I've been away from work, and my head just is going crazy. It's just weird. Sundays are the weirdest things for me right now.
What about Liam, Gord? Does Liam go to university or school, or what does he do?
Oh man, I've lost my netman, Pete.
Oh really?
He took off for St. Lawrence College in Kingston.
Wow. Okay.
On Labor Day. So Labor Day, I'm on my own. And honest truth, this is the honest truth. The last thing we did, he rigged up a system for me. So when I go out muskie fishing with the giant net, because he always netted the fish or I'd net his, now he rigged a system up with a line that I can put in the rod locker that I wrap around the end of the net and keep it over the side of the boat so I can work on the fish when I'm fishing along.
I love it. You know what I use for that? You might want to think about this is the sandbags that they use for lighting. Our lights here now. They lay a big, heavy, double-sided sandbag over it. You plop it over the handle of the net, and it will not go anywhere.
Oh, wow. That's a good idea, Pete.
They're about $40, $30, something like that. Not even that, maybe $20 to get a cheap one. It works perfect. So
will it hold up a 40-pound muskie?
It'll hold up me, Gordy, if I jump in. I'm only 50 pounds, but that's okay.
Well, that's what I'm hoping to catch, Pete.
Let's get on to the subject matter, because this is a fascinating one. Of course, it's the perfect time of year to be talking about transitioning fish. I put a blog up about a month and a half ago about seasonal transitions and where you're apt to locate these fish. So this is perfect. This is going to work out really great. Talk to us about this piece that we just saw.
And we couldn't time this perfectly. I was out on the weekend, and I just have my iPad here. This is from the weekend.
Nice.
And,
nice.
Wow.
But here's the big but. Transition time. And we always think of transition, we think summer and now it's fall. But they don't just go from summer here to fall there. It is that filtering out. And you guys are stealing my next blog for Ontario tourism because the way I caught these, I was sharp shooting. And it's one of my favorite ways to fish on transitions is if you go out looking for heavy concentrations of fish, often you can't find them. So I go out for crappies. This is one of my favorite little crappie lakes. I get there, turn on the sonar, and I'm traveling around the lake. Ooh, one fish here, one fish over there, one fish there. And honest truth, in 2 hours of looking around, I couldn't find a single concentration. I knew where they were coming from. I know where they're going to, but it's a slow process. So there's one here, two there, and I love it. And so what I was doing, got the motor on as slow as I possibly can. I was in a little tiller handle with a 20-horse Merc on, and I'm actually back trolling as well, so I could go really slow. So when I found them, so I'm forward trolling. Ooh, there's one. I turn the boat right around, circle, back troll, hover right over top. I got my rod in my hand, fire it right over, jig it a couple. Oh, I got him.
Wow. I have never heard of anybody fishing for single crappie before in my life.
It's my favorite. It's one of the most favorite. I almost don't like. It's too easy when you get on those big concentrations. You just
how deep are they, Gord?
Pardon me?
How deep are they sitting, those fish?
You know what, Pete? They were in, I'll say 28 to 27 foot.
Really?
But they're doing two things. They're dropping down and they're moving out. And I don't think I ever saw more than two fish together, maybe three fish. And I was using heavy baits. That's one of the real keys. Yeah. You can't just throw over a little tiny 1/32 ounce jig in 27 feet of water while it flutters all over and you're off the mark.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, I was fishing the smallest jigging wraps, and I was fishing the Acme baits, the Hyperglide. So, really heavy compact baits on 6-pound test line. So I just flip it over the side of the boat, go straight down, and you jig it. Got him. And then as soon as you get them, either let them go or I kept a couple for dinner, but then you motor on, you keep looking. Oh, there's another one. Swing the boat around, flip out, work it. If you don't get a bite in 4 or 5 minutes, keep moving. There's another one. And it's deadly in the fall. I mean, the best fishing still to come when they bunch up and concentrate.
I was going to ask you about that, Gord. How long a period now are we looking at while there's, stragglers? When are they going to start congregating?
And usually mid-October is the best for crappies. We're doing the same thing actually for smallmouth and walleyes. They're a little tighter right now, but I love doing it for walleyes. When the going is tough for walleye, and you guys know this, you'll often be going across an area. There's two there. And I mean, we're to the stage now, you don't ever stop until you see fish. That is the number one rule. And as another general rule, you don't stop for one or two fish. We're always looking for a nice, but you know what? If you can't find them, pick apart those ones you do find. But it does rely on light line, lighter than normal lines, and heavier than heavier jigs and presentation.
To get it down there quick. Yeah. Why are these fish, why are they single right now, Gord? Because they get together in the spring. They big schools and massive schools, even in the summer. And then all of a sudden they're spreading out now by the singles. What is the reason,
Yeah, it's a really good question, Pete. I think, on smallmouth, the real key, the driver on smallmouth and Ridgway, Mark Ridgway. Mark's done all his work in Opeongo at the Harkness Research Lab. This is really fascinating. They move every year within 2 days of every single year on the fall equinox. It's like sparrows returning, swallows returning to Capistrano. They come every year at the same time, and it's photo periods. And it's not water temperature like most anglers think, because some years we'll have water temperature, 69, 68. The next year it'll be 62, 1 year warmer, another. It's photo period. And the other thing was smallmouth, and I think to a degree crappies, and I think to a degree crayfish as well, walleyes as well. The crayfish molt right now. And when the crayfish molt on the fall equinox, they hide. And all of a sudden the fish are going, "Ooh, geez, where's all that food?" And it's totally Mother Nature's way of telling the fish to start moving out, transition out, and start switching over to bait fish. And that's what they're doing. And that's why we see a few fish over here, few fish over there. Some are getting out to those fall locations sooner. Others are still on the summer spots because there's crayfish and food there. So they're all kind of scattered.
Yeah, that transition period is kind of interesting. We tell people all the time, the best place, you can't find all this all at once. You have to find all these little pieces as you progress through the year. But once you understand where they are in the spring, where they're going to be in, where they're wintering down, the pathway is pretty clear. It might not be perfect. You're not going to find, like you just said, 100 fish, but you will find 1 or 2 fish moving down that highway to the wintering area every day. And that's the fun part about it.
And the other thing, Ange, for fish like walleyes, smallmouth, northerns, muskies as well, if you know where they were and you know where they're going, look for the best structure and cover in between, and that's the highway. It's not like they take a straight line. They might only move a quarter of a mile, half a mile, depending on the lake. In bigger lakes like Lake of the Woods here, they move long, big distances. But as a general point, it's relatively mediocre distances. But if you find those things in between, so largemouth bass. The largemouth are pulling out of those back bays right now. They're cooling down quickly. Our water temperature has dropped 1 degree a day for the last 14 days. We went from 74 to 60 in 14 days. Wow. Those smallmouth, we know where they're going. They're coming out of the ends of those back weedy bays. And right now, those secondary points are on fire. Secondary points and tertiary points, and they're the ones furthest back in the bays. And in another 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they'll be right out on the primary points. So don't jump out to the primaries. Look at everything in between.
Tell us about those secondary points. Don't skip over that. I think that's a really important piece of information.
Yeah, if you were largemouth fishing right now, Mike Iaconelli, I always remember Mike came up here probably 10, 12 years ago. And back in the heyday of Bassmaster. And anyway, Mike's up. And a friend of mine was guiding him. And they were looking for largemouth. And they went back into a bay, and my buddy, who's a guide, had taken them back in, and they weren't at the end of the bay. I mean, a summer location. It's now September, October. And they started fishing with swim jigs, pretty fast swim jigs, just a jig with a soft plastic krill, but swimming it out. And they were hitting the secondary and tertiary points. So when people, what is a tertiary or a secondary point? We all know what that primary point, that's the one that leads into the bay. But if you look really carefully, and sometimes those secondary, tertiary points, they're only 5, 10 feet, little extra indentation out. And they're deadly at this time of the year because the smallmouth are just slowly slipping out to the primary points, and they stop at the tertiary. and then the water cools down a little more. We know they're heading to the primary, and you always want to keep checking the primary. And many, many days you will catch fish there. They're the early arrivers. But the primary points get better and better and better. But the tertiary and the secondary are deadly right now. They become the best spots to fish. Another week or two.
Why are they deadly, Gordy? Is it bait sitting on those points as well, or what? Why is it? Or is it just a spot where they're in their minds and okay, here's my move, and then there's my move later? What's the?
Yeah, you know, Pete, I think it's part of that filtering process. They know where they're heading to, they know where they want to go, and they've been way back in those back bays, you know, all summer long, and they know they're going to winter on that primary point, and they're following the shoreline. But as they follow that shoreline, woo, here's a nice little secondary, tertiary rocky point. It's got a few crayfish on it. Hasn't really been probably hit by fish all year long. And so there's perch hovering around. There's probably emerald shiners, a few weeds. They pick those off and they just keep filtering out towards that primary point. But, you know, it's Pete, it's like all the folks down in your neck of the woods that are leaving Toronto on the weekend, heading up to the Muskokas or Halliburtons. They're driving up 401 or 400 and they stop at every, you know, those highway rest stops. And that's what the secondary point is, and that's what the tertiary.
Oh, that's a great analogy. I like that.
They're highway rest spots.
Yeah, they're you don't want to live and die on them. You want to get in there, check it out, and get out. You know, don't hang in there all day long.
You know, and sorry to interrupt, but you just made a phenomenal point. The one thing about fall, keep moving. Move. Yeah. Do not wait for the fish to come to you.
Yeah. Okay, so before I let you go, because we might not touch this subject again for God knows how long. So once they get to the primary point, this is their drop-off point. From here on in, it's winter home wintering areas.
Yeah.
How long do these points stay hot? Because they can be on fire. I mean, if you hit it right, they're just absolutely on fire. How long does it last, and what triggers that?
Those primary points will last until freeze up. They truly. Now you might have to change techniques because of water temperature, but those fish aren't leaving. With smallmouth, it's even crazier. The smallmouth they home for life. So if you've caught, and I almost hate continuing to say this to folks, but if you have an underwater hump or a rock pile or a point where you have caught them in the past, they will be there. They will not leave. They home for life. Mark has his census is over 100 years old, the longest continuous census of an animal population on Earth. And they are still in the fall where their great-great-great-great-grandparents were 100 years ago. And that's the downside. You can actually burn them out.
Yeah, and exactly.
They will not leave. Yeah. One other real quick point, guys, if folks are fishing for smallmouth, do not live well them and move them. We see so many people on social media, and they like to live well their best 5 fish, and then at the end of the day, they hold them up and get a photo. And then they release them and say, well, I released them, they're in great shape. Smallmouth home, and they winter on a particular spot that they're faithful to for life. And once you move them, they stop feeding. And they will do everything in their power to find that winter home range, and they will not eat until they find it. So if they go into the winter and they haven't found it, we replicated Mark's work here on Lake of the Woods. 50% of the smallmouth were dead next spring because they spent all their energy looking for home.
How far was that, Gord? How far was that release point from the capture point?
Really good question, Pete, because the closer you do it, the better. And that's why we always say to folks, for sure, you can live well them if you want a few pictures, but then don't take them from where you caught them.
Right.
And let them go right there. The further you go, the more you're risking it can't find home, and the more you're risking it will spend the rest of the fall looking for home and not eating. And smallmouth are like bears. If they haven't gained enough nourishment going into the winter, they starve to death over. They do not feed.
Wow. I got two. I've had two things in my mind. I got to ask Gordy. I'm sorry, but I got to do this. To do with all this, the secondary points. If there's a bay, if the bay is shaped like that, right there, and this is the shallow side of the bay. If there's no points and there's an island in the middle coming out of the bay, can you consider that a point or no?
Absolutely, Pete. Structure and cover always rules. Okay. So anything, it's so funny because we actually have, and I've taken folks there when we're fishing. I'll go, see that secondary point? And they'll go, secondary, I don't see any point there. But a point could be just 8-10 feet of, it's just an indentation that goes out a little further. Yeah. And when you look in the water, there's a few extra boulders, and boulders are key. If you find those boulders on those secondary points, you flip in there, pitch in there, swim a jig.
Murder. Crazy.
Now, one more quick thing, Viola. Stop it. There's no commercial break. Don't worry about it. One last thing, very quickly. I was out on the weekend, and this has happened to me 2 years ago, and it happened to me again Saturday. The largemouth bass, I'm catching largemouth bass in 1.5 to 2 feet of water, and big ones. Nice, yeah. And they're active as hell. They're not out in that deeper, they're not in the points yet. This is a shallow flat. It's 60-degree water, 61-degree water temperature. Is that normal? Or like you said, I didn't get them when they went to shallows. This place I went to, wow. It was really shallow.
The interesting thing, though, Pete, I'll virtually guarantee on those weed beds, and this is really cool question. I actually won a fall tournament here. It was September, it was right at the end of September, early October, several years ago. And we won it actually on big largemouth. And we were in a really large bay with all kinds of like beaver indentations. And you could take the boat away back. Virtually every one of those fish had pulled out to the outside edge. Okay. So you could go back in, and they're doing exactly what we're talking about. But the gigantic weed beds, consider that a bay in itself, right? Almost in and of itself. And so they've now worked out to the edge of those weeds. And now when you find little points, you don't find the bass all evenly around the edge of that outside leather leaf and floating bog. They're right. Always on those little points, little inside turn kind of things. And the next move, tertiary point, secondary point, primary.
Okay.
That's worth the price of admission.
For sure. And then some.
Great to have you back on board, Gordy. We look forward to hooking up with you on a regular basis. We're still, in the process of learning this whole webcasting thing. So we'll keep you informed as to when and where. I'm sure Sarah's got you on speed dial now.
Well, it's fun, guys. And as I was thinking as we were doing this, we should chat maybe in advance, and we could draw out diagrams. And
absolutely.
Be a riot. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Gordon, we'll let you go, my friend. You have yourself a wonderful week, and leave some of those fish for some of the other people around there, please.
I'm going crappie, walleye, and smallmouth fishing within 2 hours.
Of course.
Nice. See you, Gord. Have fun, buddy.
Good, boys.